Today's Japanese slang term is kotsue. This is a shortening of kokaku, which is like your skeletal structure, and uebu, which is a wave. So if you have a kokaku uebu and you shorten it to kokue, you have this word. Yes, it does look like you might want to read it as honewe, and some Japanese people have commented that they feel like reading it like that. And it is frustrating that kokaku becomes kotsu, but that's how things are. So let's accept it and move on to the meaning, which is a body type. Specifically, kue and the longer kokakuebu refer to a skeletal structure which has, well, a wave to it, generally described as having wider hips and then kind of curving in as you go up. In images like this, you can see it contrasted with straight and natural as two other body types. Straight, I get. Natural seems weird to me because, like, all body types are the natural body type, I guess, but whatever. Since we're talking about slang, what I really should note is that kotsusuto is also used as a shortening of kokaku streito. And this kind of body type discussion is quite common, often in fashion, but there are some that go into a lot of detail that makes me almost feel like we're discussing some kind of horoscope-like thing. Like, this website goes into so much detail that beyond listing things like the hip size and the presence of a wave, they also note that the center of the weight is below the waist, and the people have delicate thighs but volume above the knee, or even flat oval-shaped wrists. And I didn't know that your wrist was linked to your skeletal body type, but I don't know, maybe it is. At least, yeah, I can see why this term is useful in images like this being used by influencers to talk about why a certain type of clothing would match your body type, but I do have to admit when people say that certain foods match your kotsue, that seems something that I'm a bit skeptical on. But hey, I'm a linguist, not a nutritionist, so, whatever. But as you've seen from these various accounts, which are all, fashion related, that's the main place that you're going to see this term as well as other terms like kotsusuto, but you can also find it in terms like this, as some people, of course, find certain body types attractive, and so they use these shortenings to refer to those body types. And this is very much a recent addition to the Japanese fashion lexicon as well, because the oldest hits on Twitter for kotsue actually only go back to 2018, and Google Trends shows no interest whatsoever until we get into 2022. Surprisingly though, actually kokotsuebu is much older, as I can find uses of this going back to 2013 or so. So while this may seem like a pretty simple shortening along with kotsusuto, it took at least 5 years for the connection to be made. And I can't say anything officially, but I do have a theory because I asked my wife if she knew this word. She's the one in our relationship who touches grass, so I like to test to see if she's heard of these things as a general barometer for if they're normal, and she had not. But when I asked, okay, what about kokakuebu, she said, oh yeah, I know that for sure. And then was like, why would anyone shorten it to kotsue? That's hard to say. So while I do not want to present like one Japanese person's opinion or statements as representative of the entirety of opinions of people throughout Japan, this is not a street interview channel, the 5-year gap may be due to some kind of resistance in this phrase, as the shortening may not be one that actually feels natural or comfortable. And again, if we remember the first post we started with, they were arguing that they want to say honewe instead. And that is where I would normally end this video, but I actually want to dial back, because if you saw one of the screenshots earlier, there was the word perai there, and you know what? Why not? Let's talk about that too. Because this is a shortening of usupperai, which just means that something is flimsy in terms of literal, as in fabric, and that's where we saw it there. You can also see it in this discussion of the clothing being worn with a scarf, but it can also be flimsy or thin in terms of quality, as in this discussion of the protagonist images and motivations within a book. So perai is just that, basically, but shorter. Now, I have found some websites that assert that perai is mostly used for the thin in content or thin in value meaning, such as in this use to critique a song as being low in value. And I will say that in generally examining the data, I think I agree, but that's a vibe-based agreement, not a data-based agreement. I should say that there's no question that people do use perai to refer to just the literal thickness of fabric, as in the image you're looking at now. And people have been doing this for a long time. There are hits on Twitter going back to 2008. Both of these are non-literal, though they are relating to like content quality, etc. And I was actually able to find a hit back in 2001 thanks to Google. And this is actually important because I did find some Japanese websites stating that perai was developed by Gyaru in the kind of pre-internet, pre-normalization of the internet era. So this actually stands as evidence that perai has been around for probably at least a few decades. And because it's been around so long, it's even developed its own kind of spin-off terms. For instance, a pera otoko, or a pera onna, is a term for a guy or girl who is, well, a bit shallow, making the history and depth of perai's use, of course, kind of perakunai. And there you go, that's 2, 3 more 4-ish words that I talked about in this video. I honestly can't think of a good way to link them all together into some kind of clever ending, so let's just end with this ending, which is very perai.